The election of Donald Trump as President of the United States had a ripple effect across the globe, with some countries going into a state of panic while others celebrated. The US election is always seen as a global event because its impact reaches every corner of the world. So, let's dive into how Trump's victory was perceived in different parts of the world, starting with the US's neighbors. Canada and Mexico were certainly not pleased with Trump's win. Immediately after his victory, the Canadian dollar saw a significant decline. Trump had plans to impose tariffs on both Canada and Mexico, and the tax changes in the US were expected to draw large-scale investments from Canada to the US. As a result, this wasn't good news for the Canadian economy. Even during Trump's first term, many of his policies were against the interests of Canada and Mexico. So it's safe to say these two countries weren't too happy with the outcome. Now, moving on to the US's biggest trade partner, China. Despite congratulating Trump on his win, China was likely very concerned. Trump had been openly hostile towards China, having imposed tariffs worth $250 billion during his previous term. He also made it clear that he intended to reduce US dependence on Chinese imports, making his presidency a nightmare scenario for China. On the other hand, Russia was extremely happy with Trump's victory. President Putin even congratulated him personally. However, this was bad news for Ukraine. The aid Ukraine had been receiving from the US was likely to be significantly reduced. According to reports, peace talks between Russia and the US over the Ukraine conflict had already begun, meaning the war might come to an end soon. Ukrainian President Zelenskyy knew that the level of support his country received under Biden's administration was not going to continue under Trump. India also seemed pleased with Trump's victory. Before the elections, Trump had frequently mentioned improving relations with India, and reports suggested that Indian Americans had overwhelmingly voted for him. However, India's neighbors, Pakistan and Bangladesh, were not so happy. Trump had repeatedly labeled Pakistan as a supporter of terrorism and had criticized Bangladesh on multiple occasions. Israel was probably the happiest of them all. Trump's policies had always favored Israel, and his presidency was expected to bring even more support. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu congratulated him. On the flip side, Iran was one of the most disappointed countries. Trump had always seen Iran as a significant enemy, and this was a tough situation for Iran. If any conflict arose with Israel, Trump was expected to fully back Israel and could potentially get involved directly. The majority of European countries were in shock after Trump's victory. Most European nations were opposed to Trump from the start, and his recent statements about NATO only added to their concerns. French President Macron even went as far as to say that Europe could no longer trust America. As for the Middle East, it was a mixed bag. Some countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE were relatively indifferent or even pleased with Trump's win. However, other Middle Eastern nations were far from happy, primarily due to Trump's unwavering support for Israel and his past comments about Muslims. There are several countries like Brazil and the Philippines that would be happy after Trump wins, while countries like Japan and Australia might be a bit upset. In summary, Trump's victory was a mixed bag for the world. While some countries braced for challenging times ahead, others hoped for favorable policies and stronger alliances.